Hey kids, something new and a little bit different today because you don't have these books at home. This is our previous reading program, Houghton Mifflin Reading, and it's the expeditions for fifth graders. But I want to read you something. We're going to try to be well-rounded in what we read about the Revolutionary War. So since we're reading about Paul Revere in class, I want you to have access to this excellent story, Katie's Trunk by Ann Turner, and illustrations by Ron Himler. It's a great story. I really miss it. And so I want to put this on my channel so that you guys can access it, and I'm just going to read it to you because I think that's the best way to get through it. So this is the kind of preview to the story. Who were the Tories? Now, we've been talking about the Patriots and the Sons of Liberty in our social studies. So the Tories I had mentioned are the people who supported the king. And so let me just read through this introduction and then we'll get into the story. Who were the Tories? At the time of the American Revolution, nearly 1/3 of all colonists were Tories, or loyalists, you'll see this word also, who remained loyal to the King of England and believed that the English laws were fair and just. They thought everything is fine. They opposed the rebels who were arming and drilling to prepare for war. The story of Katie's Trunk shows how neighbor turned against neighbor in the growing trouble with England. Check out this great illustration, this great picture. George III became King of England in 1760, shortly before he posed for this portrait by the English painter Allan Ramsay. Even some famous patriot families included Tories. Benjamin Franklin's son, William, the governor of colonial New Jersey, sided with the British. So even within families, they disagreed about the best way to handle the taxes, the taxation without representation, what to do about it. And at the bottom here, the American Revolution caused between 75,000 and 100,000 loyalists to leave the colonies. Most fled to Canada. This sketch shows a Tory family camping on its way up the St. Lawrence River in 1784. So they had to leave a lot of things behind. Here's the author, Ann Turner. And I'm not going to read this part because I know I'm short on time. Here's the illustrator, Ron Himler. Okay, and you can read those on your own time. And here's the story, Katie's Trunk. And this is part of our Revolutionary War unit, or so it used to be. And now we just kind of don't really have anything that has all this great stuff together. So here we go, Katie's Trunk. When I'd been bad all day long, hiding Hattie's doll under the sofa and never telling where it went, Mama sighed and said, I should sit you down to sew long seams all day and get the goodness straight inside. Katie, what is wrong with you? I couldn't tell it with a name, though I felt it inside, the way a horse knows a storm is near. I could feel the itchiness in the air, the wind bringing cold, the clouds tumbling over the trees, bringing rain, a sour rain. Must be, Mama sighed and sat down to tea. Must be all this trouble and fighting. Why, it makes me skittish as a newborn calf, all this marching and talking, these letters your papa speaks of, that tea they dumped in the harbor. You know what that is? That's the Boston Tea Party. Okay, not a party for sure. Here's the picture. Mama's hand shook. Tea in the harbor, wasting God's good food. Brother Walter said, That's not the least of it. It will get worse. She peered at him. How could it be worse, Walter? Then she shut her lips on the words. Already we had lost friends, neighbors, families we had played with on the green and helped with building their new barns. Celia Warren no longer spoke to me. Her brother Ralph no longer spoke to Walter. Sometimes I heard that word hissed, Tory, like a snake about to bite. The rebels were arming, Brother told me, marching and drilling beyond the meadows. I'll never forget the day they came. The sun was hot on the mill pond, and Walter, Hattie, and I watched the dragonflies peel their skins off on the long grass and fly away. Something like smoke rose over the road, and out of it Papa came running. "Get your mother! Hide in the woods! The rebels are coming!" We ran to the house, Mama's face like a white handkerchief. She shoved a piece of pork pie in our hands and ran us out to the thick woods where we could hide. Crouched in the underbrush, I felt like an animal in a trap. And suddenly I was so mad I could not still myself. I raced for the house, Mama's fierce whisper trying to call me back. I would not let John Warren and Reuben Otis hurt our house and things. It was not right. It was not just. It was not fair. It's a great illustration. It just shows her anguish. Inside our parlor, I touched each thing I loved. Mama's pineapple teapot, the silver tray shining like a moon, the pictures of all our kin ranged across the wall. Home. Then I heard voices by the door. Reuben Otis, John Warren, Harold Smith, and others not our neighbors. "This'll be fine pickings." They paused on the front step and ripped the knocker off the wood. I ran into Mama and Papa's room, looking for a place to hide. If they could steal, they could hurt as well. There was Mama's wedding trunk, big and black and domed. I pulled up the trunk lid and hid under the dresses. In the shut-down darkness, everything was muffled and far away. The door slamming, their footsteps next door in the parlor. "English goods," someone spat, and something hit the floor and broke. My breath stuck in my throat. I heard Reuben say, "Mr. Gray has money here. Look hard for it." John Warren spoke of arms they would buy. The air closed around my mouth like a black cloth. I'll keep this on the picture while I read the next page, then I'll show you the words. I bit my hand and prayed, though I was never much good at that. I thought my words might go up to God like bubbles in a pond to the silver top where they would burst. "Please, God, don't let them find me. Don't let them hurt us. Let me breathe." The footsteps came closer. Someone leaned against the trunk. My breath got caught somewhere amidst my stomach and chest, and I could not get it back. There wasn't enough air. John Warren said, "Fine dresses and silver here." He pulled up the lid and the sweet air rushed in. I sucked in a breath as a dress was snatched out. The rustlings drowned their words. Another dress went, and a hand touched me. I wanted to bite it to make him jump and shout, but I stilled myself. Maybe he didn't know. Suddenly, he shouted, "Out! The Tories are coming! Back to the road! Hurry!" He did not close the lid, and footsteps sounded out the door. Sudden quiet. My heart beat loud as the horses galloping down the road. Quiet as quiet, I crept to the window and looked out. No one. Puffs of smoke far down on the green. A horse thudding past, riderless. Someone's hat blowing by in the gusty wind. Would I ever play with Celia again? Would I always wear this name, Tory, as if it were written on my chest? I sat down. hugged my knees, and began to cry. Walter ran inside and hugged me so tight, my nose stuck to his shirt. Mama, Papa, and Hattie came next, white as the moon and as silent. Only Mama scolded. "Katie, leaving us that way." Her voice broke, and she sat beside me and stroked my hair. Papa looked out the window. "It's not bad, dear ones, just a skirmish. No one's hurt that I can see." Walter's mouth snapped open and then shut tight. I wiped my eyes on his sleeve. A sudden thread, like a song, ran through my head. When Mama asked me to sew straight seams to get the goodness straight, I knew I couldn't do it. But John Warren had. When I hid in the black stuffy trunk, when my breath got lost in Mama's dresses, he left the trunk lid up to let me breathe and called the others away. He'd left one seam of goodness there, and we were all tied to it. Papa, Mama, Walter, Hattie, and me. That's the end. It's a very short story today, but it's such a great story. I love how she's talking about getting the goodness straight and sewing straight seams. So as like a punishment, if she was naughty to her little sister taking the doll, and then her mom says, I'm going to keep you on the straight and narrow. The straight and narrow, you may have heard your parents say it, it's like doing the right thing. And so in order to get her back on the straight and narrow, she was saying, you need to sew straight seams. It's a boring task. You're just sewing and sewing, just straight all day. And so it's punishment, but it's also getting something done. But she knew that she couldn't do it before. And then John Warren, when he comes in, remember, they open the trunk. They're looking for English goods, and she's really suffocating. Okay, she's suffocating. I could not get enough air. There wasn't enough air. And the hand touched her. Okay, now this is a grown man. He's like, oh, you know when you touch a child. You know when you touch a child. He touched her in the trunk, and he must have thought, oh my gosh, there's a child in here. She's got to be terrified. So it really shows this relationship between the Patriots and the Tories and how it's complicated. It's very complicated. Okay? He doesn't want any children to get hurt, and that's what happens at the end. The rebels leave, and the Tories can come back to their home, and she's okay. She's not going to suffocate. Okay, great story. I'll ask you guys some other questions. These are the normal think about the selection questions. You can pause it on here. I may put one of these on our Google Classroom and just kind of understand what happens. I kind of talked about a little bit of this, but it's that seam of goodness. That's what I was just talking about. And what causes him to leave the trunk open? Sorry, I just gave you the answer. So anyway, great story. And I love this perspective because we're going to get a lot of the Patriot perspective. So this is the Tory perspective. Great story. Can't wait to read the short story about Paul Revere to you guys because it is also quite enjoyable, but a little bit longer. See you on the next one.